It's now an honor for me to introduce our keynote speaker, Roma Torres. We all know Roma from midday news anchor and chief theater critic at New York One. She's an award-winning journalist and joined New York One in 1992 after beginning her career in News 12 Long Island. She has 25 journalism awards to her credit and won an Emmy covering the Avianca plane crash in 1991. Roma is a part of our daily lives. She has a pulse on what's happening in New York and is always keeping us informed. Last year, Roma was diagnosed with colon cancer, and she showed us what courage is all about. She not only beat the disease and is disease-free, but she's going out there telling her story to spread the word on how colon cancer is a preventable disease. We asked Roma to join us tonight to share her story with all of you, and she graciously accepted. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome Roma Torres. Roma?
Thank you. Thanks very much. And it is my honor to be here. And if only I had heard all of this a year or so ago, I might not be here this evening. Thank you. And happy Colon Cancer Awareness Month, everybody. I mean, it's something we should celebrate. Life can really take some weird turns, as you know, and I assure you one of the last places I ever expected to be is in a hospital talking about colon cancer, especially my colon cancer. But I am able to be here because I finally did go ahead and get a routine screening. And if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't be here because I'd be dead or close to it. And it really is that simple. I mean, you've heard that the colonoscopy is so extremely effective in detecting and preventing colon cancer, and perhaps the most effective of all of the screenings that are available in this day and age. Now, in my case, if I had done the colonoscopy when I was supposed to, when I turned 50, the doctor could have removed the threatening polyp without any further treatment. And I also heard a little statistic that 30 to 50% of all adults do develop polyps. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Gross, but that means almost half of us will have a polyp at age 50 and above. And essentially that's a ticking time bomb. And if you only do go ahead and get that colonoscopy, you will remove the threat with the routine screening. So I'm going to tell you my story in the hopes that you will do as I say and not as I did, right up until the point that I finally decided to go ahead and get a colonoscopy. My story. There we go. First of all, I lead a very healthy life. Otherwise, I feel great, I felt great. Even when I had the diagnosis, I had no symptoms and no family history, at least none that I knew about. And, you know, I will say that with all due respect, we tend not to talk about cancer. I mean, in my family, it was like a whispered thing, you know, and particularly colon cancer was not something that people were very open about. It's quite possible there was colon cancer in my family, but it was never discussed, and at least none of my immediate relatives never had it. But I work out, I exercise regularly, I'm practically a vegetarian. I understand red meat might be a possible risk factor. So for those reasons, I really didn't think I needed to go for a colonoscopy. Foolish me. And then, of course, there's the gross factor, and with apologies to the good doctor here. But we're talking about our rear ends, our rectums, you know, and it's obviously it's sensitive. You know, I looked up synonyms for the word buttocks. There's 70 synonyms for it, and most of them are derogatory. But, you know, our rear ends, we like to look at them, we make fun of them, but the last thing many of us want to do is have something go up them. And that's, you know, I think mainly the reason why so many of us are reluctant to go ahead and get the colonoscopy. You know, I'm not Kim Kardashian. I'm one of those people who prefer to keep my rear end out of sight and under cover. So, you know, and I'm a very busy person, so it was very easy for me to put the whole thing off. And boy, did I regret that. It's obviously very embarrassing for some people, and it's unpleasant sounding, but we really, really do have to get over the whole stigma of not wanting to get a colonoscopy for those reasons. It's an orifice, like our nose, our mouth, our ears, our eyes. And I was thinking if, I'm over all of that now after being poked and prodded and all of that, but you know how when you say the same word over and over again, it tends to lose its meaning? Well, if you say rectum and colonoscopy and all those, words that we're all sensitive about, maybe, it would help you get over the heavy resistance to the idea of doing the thing. Anyway, I turned 50. I never thought about doing it back then. I went for regular checkups. I saw, all my doctors. And I did all the other diagnostics, the pap smear, the mammogram, the blood tests, and all that. And my doctors all did recommend colonoscopy. You're 50 now, you should have a colonoscopy. And that went on through several years. And I just thought, it's never going to happen to me. I'm not a typical candidate for colon cancer. Dumb, really dumb. And you think it's a pain in the ass, literally. You don't want to do it. Well, anyway, one day I came to work, and did that turn up? No. There we go. I went to work, and there was a coworker of mine who was moping around, and I asked him what was wrong, and he was like, "Oh God, I'm having a colonoscopy tomorrow, and I can't eat anything today, and I have to drink all this stuff." And I said, "Oh, really?" And then I thought to myself, well, if he can do it, maybe it's time I do it. So I went ahead and I made an appointment to see a gastroenterologist, and thinking, nothing of it. But when I saw him, he said, "Okay, let's schedule a colonoscopy." But I needed like a month to wrap my head around the whole idea that this was going to happen to me. And everybody told me the worst part of it was the prep, and they were absolutely right. But even that's not so bad. You have to drink a lot of liquid. And in my case, it was Gatorade, and then you have to take tons of laxatives, and you basically spend a large portion of the nighttime in the bathroom sitting on a toilet. But, if anybody's ever thought about colon cleansing or whatever, there it is. There's your ticket. And you'd end up losing a few pounds in the process. So, if weight is an issue for somebody, that might be an incentive. On the appointed hour, I went to the outpatient clinic near my house with my husband and my daughter, and the whole procedure was, really no big deal. As I said, the worst part is that prep. And in fact, they give you some really good drugs, you sleep very nicely, and, you wake up and you feel, quite refreshed. So I, bolted up, and I was all ready to go, and then the doctor came in to give me the results. And, I was thinking, yeah, let's, get over with this. I'm feeling fine. I want to go home. And then he said some things that got my attention. He said, large polyp, couldn't remove it, biopsy. And I thought, oh, my God. And I stopped, and I said, well, it's benign, right? And he didn't have to say the word cancer. He didn't have to say any of that. Just by the look on his face and the body language, I could tell this was really, really serious. So at that moment, my whole world went dark. I thought of all the worst things, and I went home really, really depressed, thinking my life was over. And I did something that turned out to be very foolish, and I recommend that you don't do what I did. I Googled. And everything that was on the report that the doctor gave me, I, Googled the size of the polyp and the terminology and the wording and all of that. And it was like all the worst things, the survival rates and the treatment and the aftermath of the surgery and what it was going to mean for me, and a colostomy bag might be used, and I was like, oh my God, it's over. Anyway, 5 days later, I went to see the doctor, and he gave me the biopsy results. And in fact, it was a confirmed cancer, but he couldn't determine whether, what the stage was. They can't do that right away. But he suggested or scheduled a CAT scan, and that would determine whether the cancer had spread to the liver or the lungs, which I guess is where it usually would spread if it did. And so I got the CAT scan, and it turned out there was something irregular in both the liver, my liver and my lungs. And I was like, it's over, it's done, I'm stage 4, because that would determine a stage 4. But then he said, maybe it's nothing, and he said, let's do an MRI. So I did an MRI, and I was really nervous about that, but fortunately the MRI came back clean. So at that point, it was determined it wouldn't be a stage 4. It could be a stage 2 or a stage 3. I visited a surgeon who specializes in colorectal cancer, and he laid out all the possibilities for me. And he said that he does robotic surgery, and he found it far more effective and less invasive, and it allows for a quicker recovery. And I have to add that I was also very fortunate that I have a friend with a medical degree who was able to help me navigate, through all the information that was, coursing through my head and making me so nervous and not allowing me to sleep nights. And I suggest that, if you ever have a diagnosis like this, you might want to consult, a friend or somebody who could advocate for you, because you don't really think clearly, when you have a cancer diagnosis. It was a very stressful summer for me, even without the bad health news. My daughter was going off to college. It was going to be her first year. We're very, very close. And so, I was dealing with that little trauma, and then looking forward or not with my husband to that whole empty nest syndrome, because my son was already in college. And it was very important for me that I was able to take my daughter to school and drop her off at the dormitory before I had the surgery. So I put it off about a week. Now imagine all of this was happening at the same time that I finally broke the news to my fellow workers at New York One. And I guess because I'm on TV, it made the newspapers as well. And so if you can imagine, this was 2 days before the operation. There I was walking around the campus with my daughter, and she was a little weepy, having to say goodbye to me. And I was on the phone talking to reporters, asking me questions like, what would be my life expectancy under these conditions? And, my daughter's listening to all of this, and, all this time I'm trying to assure her that, yes, honey, I will be home to celebrate Thanksgiving. It was pretty horrendous. So let me just add and say to all of you, get that colonoscopy no matter what. I mean, I felt great, and I had the shock of my life. And if I had gotten it when I was 50, I wouldn't need to have gone through all of this. The surgery went very well. Modern medical science is truly miraculous. And I do have to say, cancer, thank God, is not the death sentence that it was in my grandparents' time. The operation is performed by a doctor. This is if it's robotic. And I'm going to show you something kind of cool. There we go. That was how it looked for my operation. The doctor sits at a console, and he's manipulating. There we go. All those little arms that are creating holes in my abdomen. I had 5 holes in my abdomen, so tiny I didn't need any sutures, no stitches. All of the incisions were closed with, I forget the term for it, but it's a Band-Aid, essentially. It's a Band-Aid, a very sticky Band-Aid, but it held. And that's what it looks like, and that was life-saving surgery. I was later very fortunate to learn that my cancer turned out to be stage 2, and I didn't, meaning it didn't penetrate the colon wall, and so I didn't need any further treatment, such as chemotherapy. But in closing, let me just say, we are all truly blessed in this day and age with advances in science that even our parents couldn't dream of, and I am a walking, talking example of someone whose life was saved by science. We have no excuse, none whatsoever, not to take full advantage of what science can do for us. And screenings at age 50 are covered by insurance, so the payment shouldn't be an issue, and there is no reason in the world not to do it. I did find out later that colon cancer, and you heard this from Dr. Smith, is fairly common among people like me, that is with no risk factors and no family history. was it 75% of cases affect people like me with no genetic predisposition. So after all that, once again, I just want to say, and my message is very, very simple. If it can happen to me, I assure you it can happen to you, and there's really no way of knowing unless you have the colonoscopy. So for God's sake, use the science. Thank you.